Hello and welcome to the FocusHoops WNBA Show. My name is Darren Paul and welcome. It's Thursday, the 1st of October. Don't know when that happened. Kind of terrified about it, if I'm completely honest. And we are here to talk about two things. We're here to talk about one thing. It's the WNBA. We're going to be reviewing the WNBA semi-finals. We're going to be previewing the WNBA finals. And we're going to do it all in the company of some absolutely wonderful human beings and with the support of Notch. There's my Notch bracelet. I've still not added to it. I need to add to it. They are the mark of achievement. More about them at the halfway stage of proceedings today. Who do we have with us? I hear you ask. Well, I mean, come on. None other than basketball royalty herself, Kaz Bullock. How are you doing? Let's fix that situation.
I'm good, thank you, Darren. I'm good. I've been enjoying watching some great basketball, and I'm a bit sad that we've only got maybe 5 games left.
Very sad indeed. I've just give it away. Here he is. It's been a long time. He's been away for far too long. Greg Mpofu with his fabulous, shiny new trim. Look at that. He's got the hairband. He's looking fresh. He's got jerseys behind, multiple shirts behind him. He's gone all out on that set. How are you, my friend? How you been?
I'm doing good, man. I'm glad to be back. Schedule's opened up a little bit, but that's a different situation altogether.
And we'll leave that one there. So, first off, how have we got to this point? How are we into October? How are we one day away from WNBA finals tipping off? It is, of course, the 1 seed, the Las Vegas Aces, taking on the 2 seed, the Seattle Storm. Please forgive the typo on that. I should not say semi-final. That should say final. That will get fixed in due course. How are we here? Kaz, explain it to me because I just don't understand.
We've had a 72-day bubble season. That's how we've got here. We've got the 2 best teams in the league facing off against each other. It's been I was going to say it's been a long season. It's not. It's been a very quick, short season, but it must have felt like a long time for the players who've been playing practically every other day since the end of July. We've had some amazing games. We've seen some amazing players, some rookies, some players that don't usually get a chance to play breaking out. It's been a really exciting season, and I think it just tops it off watching the 1st seed and the 2nd seed go head to head in the finals.
Greg, what do you make of things heading into the final starting tomorrow? Just an overview.
I think overall, if I remember correctly, these were the 2 consensus best teams in our preseason preview. So you got that going, and you also have the 2 best players from the season, in my opinion, on either side. You got Ashia Wilson and Breanna Stewart facing off. So in that case, we're probably looking at a perfect scenario in terms of the WNBA finals. And for me, they've pretty much every year rescue the summer in a case where there's not a lot to watch basketball-wise. So I know it's a lot later than usual this year because of everything that's happened. But, this is a fixture for me every year. And for the first time ever, you're going to have WNBA finals and NBA finals happening at the same time.
What's going to take your attention more, WNBA finals or NBA finals, Greg?
I can multitask, man. I'm going to be splitting my attention, So, in terms of fandom, I'm very much invested in the WNBA. It's a staple for me. I watch it every year. I've a lot of these players that I watch in the WNBA, I go a long way back in terms of watching. I remember I only saw maybe 3 or 4 games, but I did see Diana Taurasi play at UConn her final year. So that's how far back I go with it. Tamika Catchings fan when she was playing. So it's just something that is kind of muscle memory for me.
Mm-hmm. Kaz, what's going to take most of your attention? Or are you a multitasker?
Like Greg, I'm a multitasker, but I think this year that I'm more invested in the two teams in the WNBA this year. Obviously, Lakers Heat is going to be maybe not a very close series, but the WNBA finals have kind of, Seattle, Vegas, really like watching them play and really excited to see it.
For your preseason pick as well.
Yeah, they were Seattle.
Must have hurt you to say that, with your Sparks, or is it Mystics, or is it Mercury?
Who knows these days?
Who knows? Indeed, with you.
I don't know.
I gotta say, European basketball's back as well. Women's European basketball was back the other day. I was treating myself to, you guessed it, a bit of Melly Greta playing for Movistar Estudiantes. Cheeky dub. I mean, right, here's the campaign. Here's the Focus Hoops campaign, okay? Me and Robin Lewis, we're going to get home nations back where it needs to be. We're going to have England versus Wales versus Scotland versus Ireland. It's going to be perfect, right? Our campaign, get Melly to the league. Are you with me?
Ooh. Yes,
let's do it. Are you with me, Greg?
Whoa, brother. Do we have Melly Greta money?
I mean, hey, you buy these notch bracelets and we'll be talking. So let's get into it. We've had, of course, since we've last spoke, the second round has concluded. The first matchup in that second round, the Minnesota Lynx swept by the Seattle Storm 3-0. Kaz, why don't you kick us off with a couple of your takeaways from that series?
So after watching game one, where we had that really exciting finish with the Alyssa Clark buzzer beater, I thought we were going to be in for quite a series, which didn't really turn out to be the case. Obviously, Seattle won 3-0, swept Minnesota there. And the main things that really stood out to me were the turnovers and bench points from both teams. So in game one, Seattle had 16 turnovers and 9 bench points and still won by 2. In game two, they had 21 bench points to Minnesota's 8. And in game 3, they had 32 bench points to Minnesota's 7. And that just made the huge difference there. Seattle were a lot poorer on turnovers than they had been all season. 16 in the first game, 13 in the second. But they tightened that up in the third game, where they only had 5 turnovers and they won 92-71. And that, for me, is what makes Seattle so dominant and such a scary team to face off against. That when they've got things like turnovers under control, they've got such a strong bench where you're going to get a significant amount of points over them. They were leading the league in steals. They've got, well, not the WNBA's Defensive Player of the Year in Alyssa Clark, but the Focus Hoops folks. Yeah. She's such a good defender, and the whole defense from the team from Seattle is so strong. And you could see that against Minnesota. Minnesota really struggled against it, and especially when they had a shorter bench. So that for me was the 2 key things. Minnesota played, they played some good games. They never gave up. And after the series, Nafisa Collier was saying that's the experience that they need. You need to get into the playoffs and get that experience so you can use it going forward. And Minnesota, without Sylvia Fowles, have the youngest starting 5 in the league. So they've got a lot to look forward to in the future. I think they just came up against a team that had that much more experience, have the bench production, and when they tighten up on their turnovers, they're a problem for Seattle.
Greg, what were your major takeaways from this series? Just a recap of the scores. Game 1, Seattle 88, Minnesota 86. And like you said, Kaz, we were like, oh, it's on. And then it wasn't. Game 2, 89-79. And then game 3, 92-71. I think we can definitely classify game 3 as a blowout. Greg, what were your takeaways from this series?
So as I looked at it, I felt like if Minnesota were to make noise in this series, it had to be a game 1 win to kick it off. Because, just by comparison, Seattle had been sitting doing nothing for comparatively a long time. While the play-in games happen, the single elimination games happen. It's not like they were sat there for 2 weeks waiting, but that's, floor time that Minnesota had competing. that Seattle didn't have. And the key for them actually making their way out of game one was the fact that you had Sue Bird running their backcourt, who has more experience than both Crystal Dangerfield and Odyssey Sims combined. You know, she was able to keep them composed and calm and get them over the hump when things might have gone a little bit shaky in a game like that against a team. Minnesota were live. You know, they really were looking to pick them off where they could. And the biggest thing that you see here is that Minnesota at one point had a lead of 9 points over Seattle, which is, against Seattle, that's a big lead, especially the way they play defense as a collective. You know, like Kaz said, the Focus Hoops Defensive Player of the Year, and you've got all defensive second team, Breanna Stewart in there. It's hard to get a run on Seattle in a lead of that kind. So the fact that Minnesota were in that position, that was probably exactly where they wanted to be. But like I said, the collective experience you have there, Israel's Alicia Clark, Breanna Stewart, Jewel Sue Bird, and, you know, even knowing that you've got a player like Jordan Canada coming off the bench, even though she didn't probably produce to the level that she's capable of in that game, it's a luxury because she could, in my opinion, start for Minnesota with the current squad that they have. So that sort of dynamism that Seattle had over Minnesota was the difference in the series, and the experience, obviously, of Sue Bird in game one was what got them over the hump.
It's something that I think we spoke about last week, Kaz, and I think about it quite a bit, and you alluded to it a little bit. From a coaching point of view, the play-in games, what do you make of the playoff format in the WNBA? So,
sorry, for me.
No, that's for Greg. Sorry, from a coach's point of view.
The format of the playing games, I think, for me, I actually kind of like it the way it's done, because I know a lot of some of the other sports I watch, NFL, MLB, you get some stuff like that, but I don't know properly if it works in the series format where you're going to have, at the end of it, you're playing a series of 3, 4, 5 games against a team that hasn't played in up to 8 days. You know, in the bubble scenario, it's not that great of a comparison because you probably don't have the practice time that you may get if you're at your home facility and being able to do it like that. But I do like the concept because, you know, it's the all or nothing scenario that you had with Phoenix in the first round, and then they just literally just came up short in the second round. You know, it adds that extra layer of excitement because sometimes, you know, you can see it in maybe game one of a best of 5 series, you're down 10 with 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter, you might mail it in. But you're not doing that when it's single elimination. You're getting everything. You leave it on the court because there's no game after this.
So for those teams in the play-in rounds, it's obviously, as we saw with Connecticut, I think a large part of their success in this playoffs was because they had to win. They had to win or go home first game, win or go home second game. And then they got that good run on Vegas that really had people wondering, like, oh, is it their time? Are they going back to it? What about for the 1 and 2 seed? Because they're sitting around and like you alluded to, bubble basketball, they don't have that same time as they may do if they're in their own facility, and of course the travel days and stuff, to maybe game plan. And with their very fast and ferocious nature, how much work have they been able to do behind the scenes preparing for teams? Like, they know each other, they've played each other, everybody's played each other. But, you know, does that knock the competitive balance a little bit? Or maybe is that a balancing factor?
It's a classic sort of battle, internal battle, especially for coaches, is rest versus momentum. You know, what do you value the most? But then if you look at it, I think the rest suited a team of Seattle's age more than it did Las Vegas. You know, once you get going as a younger player, you're like a dog in the park. You want to just keep going as soon as the leash is taken off. Once you have to reel it back in for a few days, it's a little bit hard to deal with. Whereas Seattle were probably looking at the schedule like, man, we need to get one of those top 2 seeds. we need some rest by the end of this. So it's just it's different things for different teams. Where let's say, for instance, had New York made the playoffs, they would not probably have wanted to make it as one of the top 2 seeds if that was possible. They would have wanted to keep playing. They wanted to keep getting minutes under their belt and stuff like that. So it's just a question of the roster you're dealing with and the particular scenario.
So, was there any standout? I suppose we've said it, but who do we have as player of this of the round in the semi-final matchup between Storm and Lynx? Anybody stand out to us as player of the series? Kaz, we'll kick off with you.
Jewel Lloyd, I think. For me, she had a really good series. Had 20 points in game 2. She was just really consistent. Just had a really strong game. What series?
Yeah. Greg?
I don't know. I just keep going back to Sue Bird. I think in game 3 she flirted with a double-double, 16 and 9 if I'm not mistaken. And the great thing about having a player like Sue Bird, and I've worked with some players like this in the past, you don't notice quite so obviously what they're doing to you while it's happening. It's only afterwards when you're gathering your thoughts, you're looking like, she killed us, that kind of scenario where you're thinking, when the hell did she get 9 assists? When did she get 16 points? You don't notice it happening, but it's going on right in front of your face. And because she's not loud about how she scores, and she's not particularly spectacular with her assists either, it kind of passes you by. Whereas, the more experienced players or coaches, that she's doing damage somehow. You just can't place your finger on it.
Is that a little bit like, to use a British male comp, is that a little bit about how Justin Robertson goes about his business for the London Lions? Sort of, quietly just accruing points. Like, you look at his stat sheet and he's like got 20 and 10 assists or something like that. You're like, he's done that quite quietly. Like, very well. Like, he's a great player, but
he's a little bit louder about it than Sue Bird. But it's one of those things where you come to expect it from him because this is what he does. So again, it's the same with Sue Bird. It's like, okay, of course she's going to get her little 14 to 18 points. Of course she's going to, but you might miss it if you're not paying attention.
Yeah. All right, I like it. So Jewel Lloyd, Sue Bird as our players of that series. Shall we dive over to the other series? It was a little bit more competitive. And I don't know if that's a surprise or not, really. It was the start of the season, the down and out, the no-hopers, the disrespected 0-5 starting. Jonquel Jones not having. Connecticut Sun taking on the number 1 seed, Las Vegas Aces. And it did not go according to the Aces script, not at all. As, it took 5 games. Connecticut taking the first game, 87-62. That was a demolition job. Game 2 went the way of the Aces, 83-75. Game 3, 77-68. But it took 2 elimination games for Vegas to come back, 84-75. And then, was it last night or Tuesday night? 66-63 winners over Connecticut. And it is Vegas who advance to the WNBA Finals 2020 to face the Storm. Greg, we didn't catch your view on the opening match, the opening game, 87-62. What the hell happened there?
This was a build-up of rust, and no one showed it more spectacularly than Angel McCoughtry. From the field, I thought she was absolutely horrid in this game, and that's, it's not often that you can use those words speaking about Angel McCoughtry. But again, it was an opportunity for Connecticut to carry on their momentum that they absolutely needed. But like you mentioned, they had that terrible start to the bubble. We were speaking at one point thinking, where is their win going to come? And once they started to get the ball rolling, they were feeling good, and they needed to keep feeling good about themselves and keep winning games. So the sort of playing scenario helped them in that way. But with Angel McCoughtry not having played a proper season for a couple years now, she probably needed that momentum just as badly as anybody on Connecticut did. And it could have been a lot worse because Dawana Bonner, she wasn't much better either in that game. Had Dawana Bonner been going as well, this could have been really ugly for this Las Vegas. So they were kind of, as bad as it was, they were still actually let off the hook. Alyssa Thomas, she had herself a bit of a game there. She did a lot of damage from the field, very efficient as is her way. But Jasmine Thomas, I think she must have had at least 30. She was doing it to them all night long, and whichever way she wanted to, pretty much unguardable all night. For me, I looked at game one and I thought, I don't know if Vegas come back from this, but the quality overall in the roster shone through. And I think, as I spoke to some of you guys about behind the scenes, I don't know that we don't treat this as a sort of choke job by Connecticut.
Kaz, is it a choke job by Connecticut? They had the 2-1 series advantage. And of course, like we've just talked about, that demolition in game one. They had all of the momentum. Did they choke?
I'm just inclined to say no, just because they were the 7th seed and probably the expectations weren't there for the 7th seed to take on the 1 seed. But I totally see where Greg's coming from when they're up in the series. They're dominating pretty much, even the games that Vegas won. It took Vegas so long to get warmed up in those games and to get into some sort of a rhythm. Connecticut were generally in the lead for most of them. Their presence was felt because their defense just throughout the series was just stifling. They were triple teaming Ashia Wilson, double teaming her from the start in game 5. And I think sometimes maybe we've been looking at, the WNBA world has maybe been looking at what Vegas hasn't done, maybe rather than what Connecticut has done well, if that makes sense. Vegas obviously lost Erica Hamby for game 3 onwards, and she's out for the season now, which has definitely didn't help and is going to be a problem for them going forward. But as a team, sort of Asia's obviously been the one constant. She's playing like the MVP that she is. Angel McCoughtry had an absolute phenomenal game in game 4, scoring 16 points in the 3rd quarter, went 7 of 7 from the field. I think there was she contributed 14 points for the first 18 and then had assists on the other 4 points. So she was playing, I think, 33 minutes in that game when she's been averaging about 20. Mm-hmm. Same in game 5. So they need the minutes from Angel. And they needed the minutes from her in that series to get over the hump and get past Connecticut. And while Connecticut's defense was great, they only scored 9 points in each of in the 3rd and 4th quarter in that game 5. So their offense wasn't clicking. But that second half just looked like 2 very tired teams going against each other. So, I think Connecticut probably exceeded expectations from where people had them at the start of the season. Maybe they'll see it as a disappointment that they couldn't get past it and get back to the finals. But they've done this without Jonquel Jones as well. So that's quite an achievement. And again, they've got a pretty short bench. So maybe there's a bit of a roster shuffle next year, bit of a change up.
They always have a short bench, Kaz.
But it's not working.
In the finals last year.
But they didn't pull it off, did they? So they've got to the yeah. So maybe there's something. It's like maybe the teams with the bigger benches look at Seattle and look at what Vegas did throughout the season. They're the stronger teams because something needs to change. If they go into next season again doing the same thing, what's going to be different next season?
I'm with you. I see where you're coming from, Greg, with the idea of is it a choke job, which is something that I don't particularly like to go down in sport, but unless it's the New York Yankees in 2004. But I don't think it was, because again, they weren't supposed to be there. After the start they had and the way it was looking, they shouldn't have been going toe-to-toe with what is the best team in the country. Can we say that? We said that for the end of the regular season. Going against the MVP. They shouldn't have been in the position. So, they got to where they did. Momentum was a good part of that. They caught aces. napping. I don't know what the hell was going on with them game 1, maybe even game 2, game 3. But no, I'm not going to be overly critical, though I don't think that Connecticut, on the other hand, or on the same hand, perhaps, they can't be coming out here being, oh, we were disrespected. Because you started awfully. And I'm sorry to say that, but it is just facts. We sat here in our genius and when are they going to get a game? When are they going to get a win? 0-5, looking at their schedule, and then they like reeled off like 7 of 9 or something like that. They tore it up, and good for them. And they're an awesome team. They're an awesome collection of players. My question to you, Greg and Pofu, are they one Jonquil Jones away from making another step and getting back to the WNBA Finals in 2021? Is it that simple?
No, because I think it's more than one player. As you and Kaz both mentioned, in last year's finals, they got close to no bench production. Matter of fact, they didn't even really rotate past 7 when it came down to it. And that was pretty much the same scenario in this game. I think he got 5 bench points in game 5 from Connecticut. So they do need a little bit of depth in their roster. I'll have to look at some of the contract situations to know where that's going to be possible. But overall, I think, the roster makeup isn't suiting in what they're doing. Until she has surgery, Alyssa Thomas does not want to be playing close to 40 minutes. You know, it's just not a good situation for her to be in. I think maybe around 28 minutes will probably be a bit of a better run for her. So that obviously means having somebody to step in those 12 or so minutes each night that she's not on the floor, and possibly even finding minutes elsewhere. But when it came down to it, you know, if you look at the whole season in its totality, you could argue that maybe Connecticut punched above their weight to even get there. But looking at the season in isolation, and maybe even particularly game 5, they led by 16 at one point.
Oh, yeah.
You know, both teams were struggling to score. With that being the case, you can't put the other team on the line 22 times. You know, when you're only going to the line 8 or 9 times yourself. I think it was 19 of 22 free throws that Las Vegas made in a night where they couldn't have thrown the ball into the ocean if they tried. Giving them those free trips to the line was kind of the difference. No serious plus minuses anywhere on the roster, which, you know, not a stat I'm a big fan of anyway. And this game kind of showed it, where you've got, you know, Ashia Wilson very low on the plus minus, only for the fact that she played every minute of the game.
Yeah.
But she was probably the most impactful player on the floor. You know, so when you look at it that way, it doesn't really matter. But the fact is that nobody on the Connecticut roster was a particular liability in the context of this game. It's just that they had nothing more to give. So they do need depth.
I tell you who did have a really positive plus minus, and I tell you who did stand out for me as a really key performer in this game. Carolyn Swords, 31 minutes, 5 points, 5 personal fouls, 1 block, 1 assist, 10 rebounds, 7 on the defensive end. I have this like kind of fascination with Carolyn Swords. Her story's awesome, right? So she retired at the end of last season. She was working in the front office, and then in May, as the season looks like it's about to ramp up, Bill's just there like, hey, I've got news for you, our marketing guru, Carolyn Swords. Get your kit on, mate, because we kind of need you. We're going to take this ship to the finals, you know? Let's go, right? That's how it went. I was, you know, in the room, fly on the wall. And I love watching Carolyn Swords play because, I don't know, it's just kind of awesome. Like how she knows what she wants to do, and she for the most part does that. I'm thinking on defensive end, like she can get turned pretty easily. But I don't know, her and Wilson, it kind of worked. And then on offense, she had like, you know, a relatively efficient night, 3 of 5, and she's just doing the nitty gritty and putting serious minutes, like 31 minutes in an elimination game. I'm here to see it. I enjoyed it. I loved it. Probably joy. I don't know. Maybe that's just
no. She's a player with big value for Las Vegas, and being coached by Bill Laimbeer, you'll see that, some of the stuff he used to do for Detroit, she keeps Ashia Wilson away from having to bang all game long.
Yeah.
And most games you'll pick up on that when you look at her foul count, it's up there. So, that's where she provides for Ashia Wilson most of the value, is that she keeps Ashia out of foul trouble in that way, even though she's not the greatest defender around. But schematically, this is how Las Vegas want to play. They are a big team. Without Liz Cambridge on the floor, they need someone else to bring that size. Down you come from the front office, put on a kit, let's go.
I'm going to ask something a bit mad, right? Is Liz Cambage doing the work, doing the nitty-gritty, doing the dirty work that Carolyn Swords is doing? And
does she have
by extension,
because you think about it, you see,
true.
How many players are going to challenge her at that size, especially as mobile as she is as well. So it's true. The age-old thing of, do you post up against Shaq? Is their point?
How tall is Carolyn Swords? She's 6'6", so she's not exactly tiny herself. But yeah, I take your point.
Carolyn Swords, I think she's 6'7", actually.
6'6", 6'7". She's not exactly tiny, but I take your point. I see your point.
Cambage is a bit more intimidating when you come across her if you were driving against her, I think.
I suppose, yeah. Apparently, I've heard this from players who've played against her, but proper moaner, just constantly giving it large to anybody who'll hear it. Again, my favourite story about this Cambage, Commonwealth final. She gets ejected from the game whilst shooting free throws. She was giving it that much to the official. You love to see it. Just a few notes on this game. Like you said, referring to Game 5, just 18 points in the second half from Connecticut. I mean, it just fell apart for them, and they still could have won it had they not fouled Wilson twice in the last minute or so to send her to the line. It was Ashia Wilson going 4 for 4 at the line that tipped them over the edge, 63-66. Just what happened there, Kaz? What happened in those final 2 quarters?
So, Ashia Wilson happened, and she got to the free throw line 10 times in the fourth quarter alone. She had more points in the fourth quarter than the entire Connecticut team did. And again, I think this is just where we see the MVP, and she turns it on, and she wants to win, and she's taking her team with her, and she's doing those things to make them win. There was a stretch in the fourth quarter where she went to the line on 3 straight possessions. Every time down she got the ball, and she was driving and getting fouled. And she went, 10 free throws, went 9 for 10. Finished the second half with 15 points after having 8 in the first half, and she just kind of willed the team there. Connecticut as well, their 3-point shooting was just pretty poor. They went 3 for 19. Bonner had a 3 at the end to tie, which would have taken the game to overtime, but it was a pretty bad look. It seemed like she was defended really heavily, really well by Danielle Robinson, and she didn't really get a clear look and just hiked it up. And obviously Vegas took it in the end, but yeah, Asia's the difference maker there, and that's why she's the MVP.
Can't disagree with you there, Greg. Anything to add about this series?
My standout in the series, honestly, it was the coaching.
Oh,
that's the situation that could have easily gone south if you didn't have the championship pedigree as a coach. I'm not talking about him as a player. Bill Laimbeer as a coach. I think he's got a whole hand.
Sorry, is that the Focus Hoops Coach of the Year, Bill Laimbeer? Did you just say? Did I just hear those words?
The one and the same. The same.
Boom! There it is.
Having his sort of experience and a sort of tranquility as a coach that he probably didn't have as a player. He was able to get his team to a place where they could think about each game as its own scenario, as opposed to thinking, we got our asses kicked in game 1. What's going to happen? He's like, no, listen, let's beat him tomorrow. That's all right. We'll beat him tomorrow. It's a new game. So the sort of experience from your head coach and Bill Laimbeer was the difference maker for me in terms of even in game 5, as you could see the game bogging down, he knew where he wanted the ball to go.
Mm-hmm.
He said, look, at the very least, let's get to the line. And you could see that was part of their game plan. It wasn't, yes, I think Connecticut should have been a little bit more responsible with how they fouled and who they fouled, but it was a clear sort of point of attack for Las Vegas that it's not going in today. Let's just get to the line. Let's stop the clock. Get your rest that way. And we score with the time turned off and we play a bit of defense the other end. So for me, the standout was Coach Bill Laimbeer.
Now, you said something that stood out to me just then, referring to his ability to be calm, but also compartmentalize games and situations and stuff like that. And of all the coaches I think I've ever interviewed, he does that the best. I don't know, there's just a way he comes across where he's just taking things in his stride and the team stride, and he sees what's good, he sees what's bad, and he weighs it up. But there's always seems to be a perspective there, except for one moment in quarter number 3 where he just looks so peeved. He just sat there and a couple of times, I think it was McBride, just had a really ugly looking shot. Apologies if I'm slandering you unfairly there, Kelly McBride. And all you hear over the court mics is just, "What are you doing? What was that?" And it's just Bill Laimbeer just being like. But they still got the ball and probably scored. So
no,
it went okay.
What? Those moments do happen, and it's something that I do try and be like that as much as I can with whatever team I'm working in, whether it's the younger kids, whether it's the experienced adults. And at a certain point you have to accept that they know how to play. Your only job sometimes is to see what they don't see, and you have to sort of remove yourself from the emotional force going on to be able to do that. And out of everybody you'd have expected to be that guy, it wasn't him, but he's shown that he's able to do it.
I thought he was an interesting comparison with with Kurt Miller when you were watching them on the sideline. So Kurt Miller's constantly up and he's constantly shouting at the team, just speaking to them. And Bill's very quiet, just sat and watching. I just thought that was quite an interesting comparison. Whether at some points it almost looked like he was just letting them play through to get to where he wanted them to be.
Yeah. I mean, there's no right or wrong style. They both clearly work. I mean, Kurt Miller, he's been in post there, 5 years now, made the finals last year, was that close to making them again this year. Let's not beat around that particular bush. Both styles more than acceptable. So is that your player of the excuse me, player of the tournament? What am I saying? Player of the series there, Greg, Bill Laimbeer.
If I had to pick a player, it have to be Alyssa Thomas. She showed me the definition of strapping a team on your back and dragging them to where you want them to go. Ultimately it just wasn't enough. And of course, we know she has her struggles with her health. I don't think she has anything in her shoulders right now. You look at her when she shoots a free throw, it's the most painful looking thing I've ever seen. But she's doing any and everything else she can to put them in position to win, playing ridiculous amount of minutes. She doesn't rest.
Yeah.
So in terms of to get to the point it did was down to what she was able to bring. Yeah, Jasmine Thomas had the explosion, but the consistency, look at her field goal numbers. She's always 50% plus. She's reliable. You know what you're getting from her. So she's the only reason for me that series went as long as it did.
Kaz, before I come to you, I've just got a question that's been sort of sitting with me. In terms of Alyssa Thomas, as you rightly say, her shoulders are just, and I'm sorry for the shoulder chat, everybody. I know it's very tedious. But at what point does a team, one of the teams that employs her and is responsible for her well-being and in health to a large extent, because that is a duty of care, say, we're going to shut you down, take the time you need, we're going to pay you this? Are you kidding me? 2020 was the time for this, surely.
Yeah.
It is a weird one because you do get the situation, certain injuries, and I think you had it a few years ago. I can't remember who was. The injury itself can't get any worse. Can you play? Okay, we'll put you on the floor. So you kind of leave it up to the player in that scenario. Whereas if it was a deteriorating injury, I think they'd have taken action a long time ago. So, and I don't know that the WNBA season is long enough for her to be able to sit out for any length of time, especially with their lack of depth. So what would have to happen is the scenario that you had with Diana Taurasi, where Ekaterinburg literally paid her to sit out a WNBA season so that she was guaranteed to be healthy when she went over to a European season. So that's probably the only way that happens for her right now. But, you know, she's very obviously a fighter, and you're going to take a lot of convincing to get her to sit down for a length of time.
Absolutely. I couldn't, so much admiration, respect for Alyssa Thomas and what she puts herself through and what she puts her body through. I was explaining this to some people that were like, "Oh, are you watching the NBA?" Because they know I'm about basketball. And I'm like, "Let me tell you about the WNBA, right? Let me tell you about Game 5. It's coming up tonight. And this one woman, Alyssa Thomas, her shoulders are completely shot and she can't blah, 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 right?" Maximum respect there. But at what point does Connecticut not look at it and do like a little cost benefit and be like, 2020 is going to be a weird asterisk kind of season? Actually, it turned out that it's a great season for WNBA basketball, but we'll let that one go. And just be like, right. The season's not starting early. You're going to be sat home since March. Just get it fixed. We'll get you back next year, and it's going to be gravy. Like Kaz, I don't know. Does that? Am I crazy?
No. Like, to me, that would have made sense, especially with the European leagues finishing. You know, the seasons were cut short, weren't they, at the start of the year, and you'd probably got that unknown as to whether they're going to be able to pick back up later in the year at that point. So it does seem a strange decision, but I think she's like openly come out and said, "I'm not doing it till after my career's finished because I want to get, I want to play and I want to get paid." And like Greg said, if it's not a deteriorating injury, if it's not going to make it worse, but you can tell the way she shoots it. I mean, it goes in, doesn't it? Like,
yeah, true.
But it doesn't look comfortable. It doesn't look, if she's obviously playing at 100%, imagine what she's like at 100%.
And that's where I sort of come from. But is there a worry that it is going to knock off her shot? It goes in, like we say. And could it make things worse? I don't know. Sorry, Kaz, I talked over you there.
No, yeah, I agree. You change something like that, and then does it mean she changes the motion, the shooting, and then it could take maybe a season or so to get back into it, and maybe that's something she doesn't want to do. I can't quite recall where she plays overseas at the moment, but I know she's she scores a lot. She's one of the best players on the teams that she is on overseas, and she wants to keep playing overseas.
Was that Greg?
It could be a Markel Fultz situation by the time you wish they end up.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah,
that's kind of what we're thinking, I think.
Yeah, and then you don't want to have to kind of correct that, and how long may that take to fix in the future? So maybe she just thinks, I don't know, I've got another, I can put up with this during my career, and I'm going to, and then I'll just deal with it afterwards.
She plays for ZVVZ Usk Praha in Prague, Czech Republic. Okay. So they're going to be playing EuroLeague this year, I think.
Oh, cool.
I think they're EuroLeague this year. I've seen them at some point this season doing stuff. I assume that was in EuroLeague. I think they are. We will double check that in the break, as we're just going to take a minute now to hear from our sponsors. Thanks again, Notch, for partnering with us, and we will be right back after these messages. Word from our sponsors, Notch, the mark of achievement, and we are very glad to have them on board with Focus Hoops this year. They make fantastic bracelets that look super stylish and really help you celebrate your sporting achievement. They've just launched a basketball collection, and we're really excited to be on board with them. Let's imagine that you're a player. Let's say that you're Courtney Vandersloot. You got 18 assists in a single ball game, and you want a notch and a bracelet to commemorate that fact. Well, you can do just that. Customize it to your team colors, put the year that you achieved it, and get it the exact size that you need. There are a number of the colors available Or maybe you're a coach. Maybe you're the coach of a basketball team. Let's just say that you're the London Tyrannosaurus Rex. Your team wears red. You had the league's most valuable player, the MVP, and you want to celebrate that. You want to award them with a great looking notch bracelet. Well, you can do just that. And you can get it saying MVP on the notch itself. That's the charm. You can get the colour you want. Gold is one that I'd go for if we're commemorating the best player in the league. We could even get the team logo, if it's the Tyrannosaurus Rex, let's say, on there. And present it in a beautiful presentation case. Huge thanks for Notch for coming aboard Focus Hoops. Remember, if you're not a basketball player, though obviously check out their basketball collection. Link is in the description. If you're like me, if you're like a runner like me, you can get yourself some running stuff, cycling stuff, whatever it is. Check out Notch, the Mark of Achievement. Thank you again for them for being on board. They are in EuroLeague.
Right there.
Say again, what was that?
The couch to 5K king right there.
I did 14 kilometers the other week, and I've not been able to run since because my job. So, taking my energy. Anyway, Usk Praha, based in Prague, they are in Group B of the Euro League Women. They're in a group of, I don't know if there's a group of death, but it looks pretty spicy. Fenerbahce, LDLC Asfel Feminine, and Arca Gdynia. I hope I have pronounced that correctly. So that is a pretty tough looking group. Now, I suppose when you've got the 16 best women's team in Europe together, they're all going to be pretty tough groups, and Focus Hoops will be there all season long. Don't you worry. You were thinking, oh, what's my Thursdays going to look like after the WNBA season is done? Don't you worry. Announcements coming soon, but we think you're going to like it. Let us move on to the WNBA Playoff Finals 2020, the number 1 seed. Las Vegas Aces taking on the number 2 seed, Seattle Storm. It's going 5, surely to goodness. It's going 5. Cal's going 5?
I think it's going 4.
Aces in 4, is it, Kaz? That is a bold claim.
I think it's Seattle in 4.
Oh. Let me just write that down.
But do you know what? I think it's Seattle in 4, but I think the best player in the series will be Ashia Wilson.
I'm just going to put that Finals MVP Wilson. Okay, state your case.
I think it's a case of experience and bench production that's going to make the difference for Seattle. So this Seattle team, we said at the start of the season, it's basically the 2018 team returning. They've got 3 new players in Ezi Mabega was their rookie pick from 2019, who played pro in Australia last year. They picked up Epiphany Prince and Morgan Tuck. Aside from that, the rest of the team have all won a championship in 2018. Sue Burrs obviously won with Seattle in 2004 and 2010. And then they've got Natasha Howard, who's got experience with Minnesota and Seattle winning. Between them, they've got 11 championships. Vegas have got 1. And there's experience that they've got. They've got 78 seasons worth of experience compared to Vegas's 43. And I just think that makes a difference in playoffs, in finals games. You've got to have been there to experience it, to feel the pressure, what you're going to do in those situations. So this is Seattle's 3rd finals trip. They've never lost in a finals. This is going to be Vegas's 2nd. They made it once when they were the franchise was the San Antonio Stars back in 2008. And I just think that has such a weight to that. They've had players that have been to the finals before. So Adriel McCautry has been to the finals 3 times and lost. But the experience of the team. Asia's in her 3rd year. Jackie Young's in her 2nd year. Missing Cambage and Kelsey Plum is going to make a big difference, I think, in this series. When you look at the bench production now that they've lost Erica Hamby. So they got nothing from the bench in Game 5. There was no points. They went 0-4. Danielle Robinson, who was off the bench in the regular season because Lindsay Allen was starting. Bill Laimbeer has switched them, so he's got Robinson starting, and Lindsay Allen hasn't played the last few games. So off the bench, you've got Jackie Young, Lindsay Allen, Emma Cannon, and Sugar Rogers. And I just don't think they can match up with the bench that Seattle have got. And that's what it's going to come down to. And Seattle are a 3-point shooting team, which we know Vegas haven't done. It's not the game, it's not the way they play. And they're not really shooting or making, more than three or four a game. And I just think it's going to come down to numbers. If Seattle have been shooting 13-14, making 13-14 threes a game, and I just think those are the kind of things that are going to really add up and weigh in Seattle's favor.
Now, when it comes to the 3-point shooting, the fact that Seattle are this fantastic 3-point shooting team and Vegas aren't, but they're not built for that. They're built to get inside and do the work inside. So is that, obviously, you don't think so, but for me, is that a little bit of a red herring? The fact that we do have a styles clash. We've got two conflicting ways of basketball. I don't know how much of an issue that is, because when they met in the regular season, and yes, players were missing for both teams, but in particular Seattle, it wasn't a factor because Vegas were able to play their game and they're able to sufficiently nullify Seattle. And I think, is that not how championship basketball, any sport really, is won? Is by doing what you do well and nullifying what the other team do well, or at least just making sure your performance is on top of your game, and however it may lie. I don't know. Greg, what do you think? Kaz, I like it, but Greg, what do you think?
I'm going to go Vegas in 5 for this one. And I'm going to get into why it is that I do think that Las Vegas will have just that little bit more. For me, Seattle's most obvious strength, obviously, is their experience, but they have the stronger backcourt in general. Just Sue Bird on her own is going to be a huge factor in that. But Vegas's backcourt, they're not scrubs either. So that's not going to be a case of a 10 versus a 5, for example. It's going to be a little bit closer than that. But what I think is going to happen is, looking at it, the matchup at the 4, which is Wilson and Stewart, they're both going to score a lot. But where Wilson's going to have the advantage over Stewart is that the way that Seattle like to play, shooting as many threes as they do, is that she's not going to be under as much pressure defending at the rim as Stewart will be. And obviously she's got Source to help her out in that aspect anyway. But what I've tended to see in these big head-to-head matchups is that Stewie does tend to pick up a lot of fouls in that situation where she has a dominant player going at her a lot. And Ashia Wilson just doesn't foul that much. So you might be looking at a situation where you get Stewie sitting down in foul trouble, whereas Ashia Wilson isn't. That's obvious advantage Vegas and big advantage Vegas. So when it gets down to, I don't know, game 4, game 5, you're going to need your best players on the floor for as long as you can get them. And the way that Ashia Wilson is going to obviously have to defend Breanna Stewart as much as she can, that's pretty much going to be more or less her only concern, where Stewart's going to be having to deal with all kinds of situations. McCoughtry driving at her, obviously guarding Wilson directly. She's going to have everything sort of coming her direction as probably the main interior defender for Seattle, even though she's not the 5. She's probably the most active in there. She's obviously, like we saw in the regular season, she's capable of getting 17 rebounds and doing it that way. But when it's time for her to actually put her body on the line and have to make a stop, you're risking her fouls, and that's going to be the difference for me.
So, firstly, you're watching. We know you're watching. Get your comments in Get them in live, get them in after. We read them all. We'll respond to as many as we can. Let us know who is winning this year's WNBA Finals. Is it Seattle? Is it Las Vegas? Let us know in the comment section down below. Do you agree with Greg? Do you agree with Kaz? Do you agree with me? Who also says Vegas in 5. Before the semifinals, I would have gone Vegas in 4. However, they made heavy work of Connecticut, and the fact that they made heavy work of Connecticut actually worries me, just because that is 80 more minutes on the bodies, and all the bumping and grinding that is going to do to you. That is exhausting stuff. Playing hard minute. I mean, did Asia play? She played 40 minutes last night, didn't she?
40 minutes, yeah.
Before. She played 40 minutes. Angel McCoughtry, 37 minutes. Carolyn Sauce, 31. Kaylee McBride, 34. 36 for Danielle Robinson. That's significant minutes. I think that is going to go against Vegas. However, I can't look past Vegas, because seeing what they did in the regular season to Seattle, again, granted, they no longer have Hamby, and I think that's huge. Don't forget, Hamby was the unanimous Focus Hoops Award winner for the Dereka Hamby Award for 6th Player of the Year. Boom, there she is. That's a huge loss. She's out for the rest of the season. Hopefully she can rest up, recover, and win 6th Player of the Year again next year, assuming her role doesn't change. I don't anticipate it to.
I'd like to see Vegas win.
Oh,
sorry.
Why do you want to see them win?
I'd like to see Vegas
win.
Because I like watching it. I found them a really exciting team to watch, and I love Ashia Wilson, and I'd like to see her win a championship, and I'd also like to see Angel McCoughtry finally get to the finals and win. Like, she's been to the finals before. I'd really like to see her win for her career. So yeah, I would like to see Vegas win. I just don't feel like they will.
No, you made an interesting point, Kaz, being like, it's finals basketball. It's the fun. Who's been there? Who's been to the final? Angel's been there. She lost, right? It's bubble basketball. They're playing on the exact same gym, in front of the exact same audience. That beautiful black backdrop with those 2 screens and the WNBA logo, and like an assortment of like people, and that's it. Is that going to be in any way a factor this year, except for the pressure that we put on ourselves in a final of, oh God, I've got to win? And will Bill Laimbeer, with his experience as a player, as a coach, 5 championships across the two leagues? How much is his input of one game at a time? Let's go, let's do it. And they're a young team, but there's also a lot of experience there. Swords, McCoughtry, of course, and even Wilson, like 3 years pro, 4 years college. We're not talking like kids. We're talking about like established pro players, and she's obviously the best player in the world right now. So I don't know. What do we think? Is the experience not really there? And how's the lack of crowd gonna affect things? I'm gonna go to Greg, then back to you, Kaz. What do you think, Greg?
I don't know. I think by now they're used to the conditions at game time. It might be different in the preparation and stuff like that in terms of the lack of. But when the ball goes up, I think it's just time to play. The WNBA, like, even with relatively short experience in league, you're still getting experienced players because they tend to have full college careers and they tend to have European careers as well. So there's a lot of basketball under their belt in 2 or 3 years. So, there's no replacing the amount of experience that Sue Bird has, for instance, because, she's been there for the game being played in a numerous different ways. So she's seen the changes in the trends of the game and stuff like that. But in terms of contemporaries, I don't think there's going to be a massive shift from, I think Kaz said 40-something to 70-something years of experience. But the experience is going to sort of make a difference after the game. Recovery, how they get into film and stuff like that. But I think more than anything, that's going to come down to the coaching staff. And for me, that's advantage Vegas.
Kaz, in terms of coaching staff, advantage Vegas, advantage Seattle.
Yeah, I think Greg's right. Advantage Vegas. I mean, we've got Gary Kloppenberg stepped up, hasn't he? Assistant coach last year, filling in for Dan Hughes, who's out this year because he was had cancer treatment, so at further risk of COVID. I think Vegas probably have the advantage there coaching wise, but the player wise, Seattle.
And of course, Seattle in recent weeks or days have only lost Sammy Whitcomb. She has returned to Australia to be at the side of her wife or partner. Sorry, I didn't quite catch which. As she is giving birth to their child. So congratulations, Sammy Whitcomb. But she will have left the bubble for the remainder of the season. Kaz, you were very quick to point out that this won't do too much to impact the Storm, you think?
Yeah, I mean, Whitcomb's had a really good season. I think during the season she was averaging about 8 or 10 points. In the playoffs, she's kind of been averaging 5 points and 6 shots, playing about 10 minutes. It's not a huge amount, but it's something that I think Seattle can fill that gap. They've got the bench players that can step in and do that. It's not. It's obviously a loss because she's a very good 3-point shooter, but I don't think it will harm them too much. See,
this is where it turns out that Sammy Whitcomb is the glue that binds the Seattle Storm, and it's Sammy Whitcomb world, and we're just living in it. You know what I mean? So I think that's everybody's predictions in. Mine is, I've gone Vegas in 5.
I'd also like it to go 5 because then we can finish on a Sunday eevening at 8 o'clock our time and watch it live. So that'd be, that'd be really good. Those
refs are going to make that happen, right? Come on, let's just, you know what I mean? I wouldn't say that. Nobody would say that. Greg, what are you saying?
Unless they're giving technicals to Asia for shouting and
what was that for? What did she get that technical for?
She said and bleeping one, but not to a referee, not facing a referee. She was just sort of saying it with herself, and they gave it. It sounded like it was for the swear word, which.
How soft?
It's the MVP. It's an elimination game. Come on. Can I just get scream and one after every basket?
What is it? Is it a co-ed freaking ultimate frisbee game? No disrespect on ultimate frisbee. It's a wonderful sport. If you've ever played it, you know. But seriously, right? Come on. Like, is this House of Highlights freaking high school video that we're seeing of some ref getting a bit uppity because somebody upset him a little bit? Come on. This is the elite level. If she's going to have a little bit of a swear to herself,
it wasn't aimed at anyone. I get it if it's aimed at someone or if you're in the face of the referee or another player, but it wasn't like that.
Also, I went back and rewatched Game 5. Go on.
The ref was also in a way kind of reacting to the environment. Is that it kind of echoed as well. He was like shocked. He was like, oh, what the hell is happening?
That on the other hand, we were having this conversation last night that it is kind of ridiculous what other athletes in other sports can get away with, like footballers in particular. There's a decision at the weekend that went up against one team. The player was screaming, literally screaming in the ref's face, and he just sort of jogs on by like, "Oh, just give that penalty." So bit of balance, but
that could be, man. That could be a football. I'm telling you, it would be a different situation out there.
It would be different. It would be just like, hey, here's a red card. Have a nice one. What it should be. Bring back Pierluigi Cleaner. That's what we say. Get Pierluigi Cleaner reffing in the BBL. That's what I say. Now, I did notice after you mentioned it, Kaz, the Connecticut and one every made basket. What? But it was quite quiet. It was quite subtle. It was just like and one. And what I went back and watched it, and it's kind of like Houston with the drum in the baseball with the bin, where they're banging on the bin and you can hear it. It's like, oh, it's a fastball, and it's kind of like that with Connecticut. It's like and one. Get out of the sport. We don't need that in the sport. What do you think, Greg? Get out of the sport.
Hey man, I like trash talk a little bit. I'm not gonna lie.
on every single basket.
Has that ever made a referee? Has a player said and one, and a ref has gone like, oh, do you know what? Yeah, that was a foul.
If we were in the screen together, because every time I do something, I'm letting you know.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Greg, your finals MVP, please. Who have you got?
I think I got a double MVP here, Ashia Wilson. It can't be anyone from Seattle because I got Vegas in front, right?
Well, I mean,
what do you think McCautry could?
Go on.
I was saying, Greg, do you think McCautry?
Yeah. Games, but Wilson will just be more consistent and do it in every single way you can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm also going Wilson, though I think McCautry is going to have a huge say in this playoffs. You know, as will all the big names. Again, the center battle is going to be a really interesting one. I thought it was going to be a bigger factor in the Seattle Lynx series than it ended up being. But the battle between Swords and Howard, I mean, I don't know if that's going to be how much of a battle that's really going to be, because it's going to be, I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be very interesting to watch that. And again, how important is that going to be ultimately? Any more on the playoff final?
Do you want my MVP?
I thought you said Wilson. You already gave us yours. Did you not?
But she's not. No, so I think she'll be the best player on the court, but she won't win MVP because Seattle will win. So Brianna Stewart will win, because you're not going to give MVP to the losing team.
I mean, how many times did they give it to the logo? How many times did Jerry West win Finals MVP?
He won the first one, and that was it. He won the first Finals MVP, and that was it on the losing team.
Oh, that was it. Oh, I thought you won it more than that. Just give it to the best player. Like, good God. It's not that hard, is it? Give it to the player who's played the best. Okay.
Best player if you can't get him over the line.
Because it's a team sport.
That's true, yeah.
No, it's not true. That's rubbish. It's a team sport. Like,
it's an individual award.
But you can have the best individual on the lesser team.
But then it's your definition of what's MVP. Is it the best player, or what someone that makes the team better? That's a whole other conversation.
Can you average 50 on the worst team in the league and win MVP?
I mean, if you make the playoffs, yes. That's my cutoff. Make the playoffs and we'll talk.
There you go.
It's fairly arbitrary. But if you're in the playoff, like, I don't know.
If it goes Chamberlain did not win MVP in the season, he averaged 50.
Right, yeah, but I mean, that's Will Chamberlain, you know. All he did was stat pad. Bill Russell, he's the real thinking person's point guard. Point center, yeah.
Well, Will could have been a point guard. He led the league in assists.
Stat padding, because that's all he did. He's just chase numbers. He was like, "Oh, Joe, I think they had to literally change rules because it's just like this guy's goaltending his own teammates. Like, what is this?"
He's a weirdo.
Outrageous
in a lot of ways.
Yeah, hell of a player, though, eh? Here is we've got a new. So I think we're all agreed. Finals going to be amazing. Very excited for it. Got a new little segment on this show I like to call Mercury Stalling. My guy Greg, it's been a bit. What happened to your guys Phoenix?
Okay, so no one told me I was walking into a setup.
No. Did say, what did I say? You were like, "Hey, we've got an agenda." I'm like, "Yeah, any other business," which obviously means we're talking about the Metro.
I think a weird situation when you're talking about a player like Griner is that the Mercury this season experienced addition by subtraction. I think I said it from day one. She wasn't right. She didn't look right, and it affected the way the team was playing. They got better after she left, simply because everything that they're used to doing with her in wasn't working with her in the state that she was in. And, it can happen. Some people can be the best player in the world when they're 100%, but they have no business being anywhere below 100%. They've got nothing to offer you.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah.
Brittany Griner. I think, there's numerous examples where you can look in the league now. I don't think you're getting much out of, for example, Anthony Davis below 100% if you're looking at the NBA, that kind of situation. So she's got a lot of soul searching to do, I think, according to reports coming up from the WNBA in terms of what her long-term future is in Phoenix. I think any team is better for having her. She's been in Phoenix since she entered the league, but it's a much changed Phoenix organization right now. I don't personally see Diana Taurasi coming back after this season to the Mercury. It's pretty much going to be Skylar Diggins-Smith coming to the fore in that situation. And is it time for Brittany Griner to make a change for herself as well? So that's the question.
Now, when you put it like that, it makes me wonder: has Skylar Diggins-Smith taken her from Dallas to Dallas Mark II? If you're convinced that Taurasi and Griner aren't there, obviously there's more talent around, but those are two huge players.
Well, I'd expect that in the recruiting stage before you sign, these are conversations that you have with the front office to say, look, okay, these people, at least one of the two, maybe not both of them, at least let's look at Taurasi in particular. She's here, it's her team, but we were looking to phase the team more towards you taking the lead. That's either with Taurasi taking a step back or Taurasi retiring, either way. So I expect that's how the conversation would have gone in recruiting. And, having been in the situation previously where she was more or less a focal player in the early Dallas Wings days, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She'd be very comfortable in that situation, and she's got Brianna Turner alongside her as a.
Oh, we lost Greg for just a moment. Greg is back.
Isolated in any.
Oh, hello. We lost you briefly there, Greg. You were saying about how she's got Brianna Turner alongside her.
Yeah, she's got Brianna Turner alongside her, and she can be sort of the. I don't like to use the term poor man's Brittany. She a version of Brittany Griner on the defensive end.
Yeah.
I think she made the first team all defensive, if I'm not mistaken, or second team.
I think you might be right. I just need to double check.
You've got that player there. Yeah, you have that player there on the front line that really steps up defensively, and she can contribute offensively as well. Can't be as dominant as Brittany Griner on her best day, but you still have your running mate and a punching partner there if you're Skylar Diggins-Smith, and Mercury are known for getting pieces together that fit.
Brianna Turner was first team all defense. Actually, do we have time to get into that? Shall we spend a couple of minutes just talking about the all defense controversy? Would help if I can get my words out. Hang on a minute. Oh, back again. It'll be worth it. Was the Defensive Player of the Year, Candice Parker, snubbed? Not in either of the WNBA Defensive Team of the Year 2020. Let me just run through. First team, Alicia Clark of the Storm, the Focus Hoops award winner. Betnijah Laney of the Dream, Brianna Turner, Mercury, Alyssa Thomas, Sun, Elizabeth Williams, the Dream. Interestingly, no Storm. No, no. What am I saying? Of course, Alicia Clark. No aces in that first team. Second team, Brianna Stewart of the Storm, Nafisa Collier of the Lynx, Ariel Atkins, Mystics, Brittany Sykes, Sparks, and Ashia Wilson of the Aces. Interestingly, only one player got 11 first-team votes and 0 second-team votes. There are only 11 votes on offer. Can we all guess who that is, kids? It's Alyssa Clark of Seattle, which for me tells me that she should have been the Defensive Player of the Year for the year 2020. No shade on anybody, no shade on Candace Parker. I'm just saying. Looking at the numbers, and Greg, it was something you said. Looking at the impact, and I think her impact was enormous on a side that could very well win the WNBA championship. I recognize it's a regular season award, but they were the second seed and they were top seed for like 21 of 22 rounds. So, I mean, I'm just saying. What do we make of this, though? Like, the DPOY didn't make all team.
In a situation like this where there's a discrepancy, come to find out that the media votes on the DPOY, the coaches vote on the all defensive teams and or etc. I tend to lean towards the coaches in that situation because, particularly with what you call pro sports media, they fall in love with narratives a lot. And I guess, they were looking at Parker's been in the league for X amount of years, still playing at a certain level, almost making the mirror comparison of what a certain Mr. James is doing in the NBA and looking at it like that. Now, there was no way they could have made her the MVP because that was very obviously Ashia Wilson from very early on.
Yeah.
How else could they sort of fit her into the award season in a way? And, don't get me wrong, she was good defensively. But for me, at best, she would have been a second teamer. And if you look at how the coaches voted, they did say that the LA Sparks had a defensive player on one of the teams, but it wasn't her. It was Brittany Sykes. So they're saying even in her own team, they felt there was a better defensive player. So that kind of goes to expose the discrepancy between the coaches and the media. And, my dark horse for defensive players, Brianna Turner, I actually had Nafisa Collier as my personal defensive player of the year just because of how she affected the way Minnesota played defensively. It's not so much of a snub as far as I'm concerned because you got two different bodies voting. And I just feel like one has a better handle on the pulse of what the reality of the situation is.
I'd just like to say, by the way, vindication for my early shout for DPOY, Brittany Sykes making second team All NBA. And happy with that. Kaz, what do you make of the situation? Try and take off your Sparks glasses. Carry on.
I think they're on this season. If you think about it, normally the media are going to be kind of on the sidelines, aren't they? They're going to be able to see the players up close, which they haven't had the opportunity to do this year. They're doing it through screens, and maybe you miss things and see things a little bit differently. Whereas the coaches, that they're right in that they're seeing the players day in, day out. Something LaChina Robinson posted I thought was really interesting about a conversation she had with a coach. She didn't name them, but she was saying when you're looking at defensive players, sometimes players that are leading the league saying things like steals, to get, say, 3 steals a game, they're having to put themselves out of position or maybe risk, maybe make a risky play where you're going for a steal and you're maybe not always going to get it. And sometimes, even though you're leading in steals, say you get 6 points off those steals, you can maybe be giving up 8 or 10 points in those times that you're out of position. So the things that they were looking at weren't things like that kind of showed up on the stat sheet. Like maybe we've mentioned in the past with Alyssa Clark, it's not her stats that you're looking at, it's the other teams. How many points is she holding her assignment to? It's quite an interesting way of looking at it like that. I would have put Parker on the second team, and I would have had Alyssa Clark for the Defensive Player of the Year.
So who are you snubbing from the second team? I love and despise that word in equal measure.
Yeah. I mean, Brittany Sykes was really good. She was leading the league in charges. So, I think she's right to be there. Remind me who else is on the second team.
Brianna Stewart, Nafisa Collier, Ariel Atkins, and Ashia Wilson.
It's the position thing, though, isn't it? Because then you can't, because Parker plays centre or forward, so you'd have to take off Ashia or Collier. And I wouldn't take off either of them.
So Wilson was the lowest point scorer. She got 21 points overall. 3 first team and 2 second team all defense votes, which I think really, to me, that's pretty interesting. The fact that 5 of the 11 coaches that voted for her or voted had her in the team. I find that quite interesting. And 3 of those coaches had a first team, whereas 2 had a second team. And evidently 6 others didn't fancy for it. And obviously, I think I assume the way this works is you can't vote for your own players, so that's why it's out of 11. That makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's interesting. I don't know if I'm reading too much into that, but I don't know. So who are you taking out then? Are you getting rid of the MVP, Ashia Wilson? Are you honestly taking out the best player in the
No. See, that's why it's so hard. No. But I feel like
you're taking out.
No, because she was so good.
Say again, Greg.
She can come off the bench.
I'm not even certain that position comes into it that much if I'm looking at it properly. But if I was to go positionless and take someone out, probably Ariel Atkins if I had to put Candace Parker in there. But
she was great as well.
To be honest,
where did Washington finish this year? 8th.
Yeah, last seed in the playoffs.
And I mean, here's the wild thing: you've got two Atlanta players, and Atlanta finished what 10th,
and they had a bad defense,
and a
lot of the season,
which is good for you two. Like, hell of a job, you two then.
Yeah, Elizabeth Williams was really strong on defense.
With Atlanta, because I really thought about this when the list came out. I was like, how on earth are they that far down with that? The on and off ratings of both players are incredible when you look at Atlanta. If you extrapolated the season and said play a full season without either Elizabeth Williams or Benijah Laney, they would have been by far the worst team in the bubble.
Mm-hmm.
What's in New York?
Just by the on-off.
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Even
with snubbed Rookie of the Year.
What you mean, Satu Sabali? She plays for Dallas, mate. I don't know what you're saying.
Oof, I don't know. Like, see, if you want to get the top individual award, you got to be winning.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're right.
Yeah. Unless you're averaging 50.
Even then, you don't.
I painted myself into a corner there, haven't I? Because I do often say reward winning. Like, you've got to be a playoff team at least to be getting those top awards, except for Betnijah Laney getting. Hang on, wait for it. Boom. Most improved, because she was just outrageous this year. The improvement, the step up was phenomenal. I mean, I'm going to bring it out again. Look what it is. It's everybody's favorite. Boom. It's the MVP graphic from like week 1. Who's that in the middle? It's Betnijah Laney.
Hey, FocusHoops gets it right. I'm just saying.
Yes, we do. I think we're going to call it there. So, by the next time we try that one again. So by next week, we will be back on Thursday, of course. And we should be, 3 games down in this playoff schedule? I just need to check.
3 games. Schedule. It could be over.
It won't be over. I mean, it could be over. It's not going to be, but it could be.
I hope it's not.
So game 1 tomorrow night, Friday. And then game 2, Sunday. Game 3 on Tuesday, the 6th. Game 4, Thursday. And game 5, Sunday, the 11th, 3 p.m. Eastern. So that's a cheeky 8 p.m. one for us. What is Sunday's game? Sunday's game is also 3 p.m. Eastern this coming Sunday. So we could end up having not only having Thursday to break down the first 3 games, or maybe all the 3 games. Potentially, we could be watching game 5 as a cheeky little watch along. I mean, I don't know. I'm not confirming anything. Rumors say it could happen. Keep an eye on Focus Hoops social media, the Twitter, the Facebook, the Instagram, all of that good stuff. Check it out. We might be with us watching it live. We're going to get Greg on for that, whether he likes it or not. Even if he's sat in a gym somewhere in the greater Manchester area, he's going to be with us. Don't you worry.
That chance.
That's a good point, actually. Forgot about the current COVID situation. Okay, we'll be back next Thursday. We're going to be talking about the first couple of games of the WNBA 2020 finals, or maybe even wrapping up the series for a 3-0 win for Vegas. I mean, who's to say? Then after that, the week after that, we are going to have our season wrap-up show / postseason preview. Look at a couple of the roster moves and shakers. And then we'll be back with something slightly different, but kind of the same. You're going to love it. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, Greg and Pofu. I appreciate your time as always, sir.
Thank you. Good to be back.
Good to have you back. And Kaz, as always, the rock that is Kaz Bullock. Thank you so much for joining us again.
Thank you for having me.
And of course, thank you everybody who's watching live. If you're watching on demand, let us know what you make of it. Who is winning the 2020 WNBA Finals? We're going to find out, and we can't wait. We'll talk to you next time.